Hey, guys, it is Allison. I am the host of your show, Allison Answers Mission Awake. I cannot wait to sit down with you today and go over how we are going to crush the mediocrity in your life that has been plaguing our society since the beginning of time. I cannot wait to have a real deal conversation that includes intelligence, fun, excitement, and real actionable steps to make a real difference in the life that you're living now and making it into something you can be damn proud of and excited to live. Sit down, put on your damn seatbelt, and get ready for the ride of your life. Hey guys, how are you today? It is Allison from Allison Answers. I have a great guest for today. He's a guy that I met in Arete. As most of you know, a lot of my guests are from Arete, which is an exclusive membership and coaching program for entrepreneurs who want to change the face of business across the whole earth to being a force for good. And I met Mike, and he is just a dynamic, really incredible, good-natured guy that has incredible energy. And I just thought he'd be a great guest. So that is the way in which I met him. But, you know, his backstory is interesting because he's a super uber successful guy who's he's more of a down-to-earth soul. And he grew up in a small town of 12,000. He lives in Canada, by the way. He moved to a big city in the career of engineering, and he hated the corporate world. And he quit to get into real estate. He door knocked in the snow, rain, negative temperatures, and he did this to build a business. And then he started leveraging social media, which I think is super cool because I would love to learn about this. And he became a top producer in his first year, and he was recognized in all the real estate trending lists. He moved to eXp Realty, and he became the #1 recruiter globally within less than 2 years through personal branding and social media content. He's like basically the guy who's able to quit the job that he hated and become so dominant in business in a new city without knowing anyone, without wealthy parents or connections, doing whatever it takes with no excuses. And that's the reason I have him on, because he is a guy who has no excuses. He is a guy who's here to deliver. And I was blessed enough to have him. He's just willing to add value. And I think that's a great message for all of us today, to understand that if you can hear from Mike and hear that he is a person who's here to add value, and if we can do that in our life, you cannot hold back abundance when you are a person who just goes out there and gives. And I see him as that. One of the things about him that I noticed is that he just goes right up to people. And he's also an introvert, which is very interesting. He is notably, he says that he was an introvert, and he has transformed himself into a person who is a networker, who's a great communicator. But he's the type of person he doesn't just communicate to get things. He communicates to give. And I think because he's such a giver, that's why he gets so much. He values people and he gives to people. And it was very evident to me when I first met him. It also was very evident to me when he just held this free seminar for a bunch of us in Arete, where he just told us how to scale YouTube. And it was just so informative, just an excellent teacher, well-spoken. So without any further ado, I'd like you to meet Mike Sherrard. I'm proud to call him a friend, and also someone who's an expert in so many different ways that if you listen in, you'll hear what you can learn in life to become all that you can be, in spite of not having the resources to do so. So let's not wait any longer and hear from this dude. Hey, guys, how are you today? It is Allison from Allison Answers and Logger Counseling Services. As you know from the bio I just shared with you, I have Mike Sherrard as a guest today. But I'm going to give you a little side note about him and how I think he's going to be of value to you today. And what I believe about Mike is that he is a man of incredible success on so many different levels. Like, he's successful in just the way he carries himself. He's successful in the way that he relates to others. I believe that about him as one of his greatest attributes is his good-natured attitude, like the way he approaches other human beings. And I think that that is one of the greatest skills to have on earth. And what I had said in the bio is that he's a man who just adds value. And I just see that he approaches people and he is a giver. And what I'd like you to hear today is what you're going to find out is that this is a man who, if you sit down and really listen and apply it to yourself, and don't think about how he's different from you, think about how the parts of him where he's struggled or where he's gained knowledge or where he has succeeded, that also can be something for you as well. So you will get a lot of nuggets from Mike because he has an incredible amount to offer. If you listen to him, you'll learn about success and you'll learn about the path to get there. So I'd like to ask you to think about the ways that you can get there, not listen to him in the ways that you can't get there because he's so great, because he's great because he did the work to get there. So without any further ado, this is my friend, Mike. I'm just so grateful to have you here. And I just want to hear a lot about you. But one of the things that I find fascinating about you that I read is that you were an introvert. And I am going to ask you to talk about that in a few minutes. But if you could tell us where you started and where you are now. And I think people will get a lot from that.
Yeah, definitely. I'm super grateful to be here and excited to share some of the stuff that usually most people don't ask on these type of calls, which is kind of the deeper and struggles, because again, a lot of people see the front facing social media side and they don't really get a glimpse as to the reality of, burning out last night and going into the abyss. Like, it's real and not many people share it. So yeah, like the condensed version of my story was, grew up in a town of 12,000 people, small town. But I was very overweight, so I was bullied in high school. And then when I went to university, I took 2 degrees in 3 years and thought that I was going to, climb the corporate ladder. My whole family are engineers, my dad, my uncles, my sister. And very cliche story, in the last year of university, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad and started going down this whole personal development rabbit hole. And I was 1 year from finishing, but now I was open up to this whole new world. Because, when my passion's cars and I love cars, not for the materialistic aspect, but that's why I got into mechanical engineering. Is I love cars, design of them, the mechanics of them. And I remember when I was a kid driving with my dad in my small town because we didn't have a lot of money, and telling him one day I want to grow up and drive a Lamborghini. And he looked at me, and my parents are the most supportive people in the world, but he looked at me and said, well, Mike, nobody does that. And that kind of was like a deeper seed in my mindset, because I've always been the type of person where, similar to Andy and people we know, we use the chip on our shoulder to execute. So that always sat with me. And, I got into engineering, did really well, was recognized as top employee of 60,000 in my first year. But I realized that wasn't getting me to where I want to be. And even just looking at the parking lot, I realized like nobody, even at the highest level of this company, has the lifestyle that I would like to build one day for me and my family. And everything always roots back to family for me. Growing up without much money, I knew that I wanted to be in a position that when I have a family one day, which is the number one priority, that they never have to worry about money or time off or vacation or this. Like, I wanted to make sure we're good. And around that time, after my first year of engineering, I was buying my house. And another cliche story, the agents didn't do a very good job that I was working with. And I always hated realtors. My parents have sold 100% of their houses without a realtor. But for me,
I've
I
hated them
wanted to
too
learn.
until
Yeah,
now. Yeah.
exactly. Right. And, for me, what I wanted to do is I knew that regardless of where I want to go in life, if I learn marketing, branding, and sales, those are the 3 skill sets that I need to thrive in anything. Whether I start my own company, work in a different industry, it didn't really matter. And with real estate being a passion from the investing side, knowing that there was a very low barrier to entry, I was like, why not get my real estate license, develop these skill sets, and then once I develop them, I'll go do what I want. And I didn't realize how much I would like the industry, but in a maybe unorthodox way when you realize where I've got to now. So, the short of my journey in real estate is, I did what it took because I was 24 years old, a new agent that just moved to a new city, didn't know anybody. So I door knocked. And in the first day, it was -10 in the dark. I door knocked in the snow and I got 2 listings at $700,000 each. And I door knocked every single day, regardless of weather condition, for the first 6 months of my business. And I became a top producer in my first 6 months. And that is when everything changed. Because for me, I understood that if I was doing an activity to scale my business, and this applies to all industries, that was a one-to-one relationship and my business was only growing when I was investing time into it, that I would never be able to scale or get time back and build time freedom or a flexible lifestyle. So crushed it with door knocking, but I realized that there was a limitation because I was door knocking for 3 hours a day, but working 16 hours a day. I was growing my business like less than a quarter of the time I was working. And that's when I started getting out of my comfort zone and saying, I need to start leveraging social media. And I started leveraging Facebook ads, YouTube, and very quickly started getting all of my business recognized on all the lists. And then fast forward, a few years after that, I use that personal brand that I built to join a brokerage that allows you to partner with agents no matter where they're located. And without reaching out to a single agent, became the number one recruiter globally at the fastest growing brokerage in history, all from my YouTube presence. So for me, it was kind of a cool way around because I always didn't want to be a traditional realtor, but I didn't know where it would lead me. And now I get to stay in the industry that I love, but do what I love within the industry, which is the coaching, teaching, and mentorship. So now I have 3 7-figure per year businesses from my training, my real estate team, and my branding agency, all within the real estate space.
Okay. So you know what I'm going to do right now? We're going to take where that whole timeline, and I'm going to go all the way back, because what I heard throughout that timeline, Mike, is I heard a young man who was so driven. That's what I heard. Because I'm hearing, like, you say it so casually, but there's more to what you're saying. So I go back and I hear about this boy, and I'm sorry, you know where I'm going. You don't know where I'm going. The boy who's bullied. That's the thing that illuminated to me. Because here you are. And that's why I brought up also being introverted. And if you look at a boy who's bullied, and then you look at a boy knocking on doors, and I'm going to call you a boy because I don't know if anybody missed it, but when you say you're 24 and you become, but then you're talking about before that you bought a house. So I happen to know you were 22 when you bought a house.
Yeah.
So how the fudge does that happen to this young man who's bullied, So there's something happening inside of you internally that has created this outcome all the way out here. So yes. How did the bullying support and give you the opportunity to be where you are today?
And it didn't just stop in high school. And there's a story that I'll share, which nobody really knows. But yeah, for me, I've always used people doubting me or being negative to use that as fuel to rise above and want to do greater things. Because for me, like, I've always been the type of person where I want my actions to speak for me and my success to speak for me instead of me talking about it. I think there's a lot of people that like to come on and talk about themselves and all the cool stuff that they're doing and how much they've succeeded. But I think that takes away from what they've actually done because now they're talking about it.
Where did you learn that? Not to do
a lot
that?
of it was just, I think a lot of it was my upbringing with my parents. My parents have always taught me, be the bigger person, do what's right. Don't stoop to their level. If you stoop to their level, you're equals with them. And growing up with these parents where they were very nurturing, very much involved in my life. And while they didn't have the financial backing, the support was worth its weight in gold and worth millions, evidently, to where it's brought me today. Exactly. So a lot of it was just these principles of, a very cozy, tight-knit, small-town family where we were ingrained with the right principles of being the right type of person and always rising above, what the wrong type of people were doing and how they were acting.
that is really how you show up. I mean, you've probably heard that. I just can say that as a person who's experienced you, you show up shining so much. It may be hard for people to see that on the YouTube thing, but this man shows up, he's shining when he comes into your presence, and you feel very valued by him when he comes. Like, you make people feel very, very special. And I think it's because you're special, actually. But what you were about to tell us a story that no one heard. So I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, definitely. And this is one of the stories that I think really lit the fire under me,
Okay.
which is that, you know, I'm in Calgary, oil and gas town. When I moved out to Calgary, I had this group of friends, and you know, unfortunately, I didn't know, but they were my university friends, and I knew them from university, right? Partying and school and studies and all that. What I didn't realize is that they were all trust fund kids from the city. So everything was all fine and dandy when I was an engineer. But what happened is, as soon as I got into real estate, which is against the grain of an oil and gas rich family in Calgary, I got cut from everything. So we used to go to parties every weekend together. We used to go on boat trips and go traveling. And the second I got into real estate, I got cut from every single friend tie that I had a 5-year relationship with. And furthermore, what happened is, again, being an introvert, I was never on social media. I used to, you know, the flashbacks of 10 years ago on Facebook come up as your memories, and I'm making fun of people on social media. But I had to do it to grow my business. So I got outside of my comfort zone, flipped this beautiful device around, and started recording videos and doing things that made me insanely uncomfortable. And I'll never forget, I just finished going to a car show, and they invited me to what was the last party that I ever went to with them. And I walk in the door, and one of my, you know, previous best friends came up to me, and he was the one that invited me. And he said, Mike, you know, I don't know if you want to be here. Everybody is talking about how stupid your videos are and how ridiculous it is to see you posting yourself on social media when you just got into the industry and you don't know anybody here. So that was like a dagger to the heart, because it was somebody that I loved and trusted. But again, I just used that as fuel. And I said, you know, all right, if that's how you guys view it, just wait and see what's going to happen. That exact same person was the first person to text me after I took delivery of my Lamborghini, asking to go for a drive.
Did you go?
No,
You didn't. Yeah.
no.
He said, he asked to go for a ride in the Lamborghini?
Yeah,
Yeah.
didn't hear from him for multiple years, and then got a text saying, hey, you know, sorry, you just got that. Could we go out for a drive together? And you know, for me, I forgive, but I don't forget. So for me, I have no animosity, right? It's like, I understand why it was foreign to them, because it was different, right? And I
Yeah.
know people have different ways of coping with what different means to them. So I don't hold it against, but I also don't forget what happened and how people's, you know, perspective shifts when that suddenly is the same thing that got them to the 7-8 figure level. Well, now that is kind of the situation, I just don't associate myself with that environment anymore. And my life's been pretty incredible because of that.
You know, I'll tell you something, just even being a person, because I see your posts and stuff, and I know that as a human being, you're very down to earth and accepting. And, you know, and I even saw what you wrote about, like, being a person who's showing luxury things. And I think that we can be judged for either direction. You know, when somebody becomes very successful, I know that people judge that as well, right?
Yeah.
So I'm imagining that you've had some pushback with that also, have you? Just about.
Uh, a little bit, but not as much as you might think. And there's a reason, and I did this
Yeah.
by design. So where a lot of people get pushback is they almost create their story as an overnight success, where they kind of don't post a lot, and then suddenly they get the car or the house or the watch or
Yeah.
whatever, and now they start posting at scale. Look at me, look at this, look at that.
Yeah.
The cool part is that when I did take delivery of my Lamborghini and got my penthouse and things like that, I was flooded with an overwhelm of gratitude and people excited for me. And the reason being is because I made my first post on Instagram the day I got licensed in February of 2017. It's still up there. I've never deleted a photo in the last 6 years. And I documented the door knocking in the snow. I
Oh,
documented
yeah.
every waking up at 3 a.m. So what
Yes.
happened is I took people on a journey to the point where many people reached out to me, hundreds reached out saying, I almost felt like I was taking possession of that car because I felt like I was part of the journey with you. So I, by design, made sure that I showed people like, you can go back and look at 2017 and see me waking up at 3 to do home evaluation, seeing me door knocking on Christmas, seeing me do all of these things to the point where you almost, unless you're just a complete, terrible person, it's almost impossible to knock or judge that journey because it's documented. And I think that was something that went really well, but also I don't let these things define me. So, yes, I include the car every now and then on my social media posts, but that might be once a month. Whereas a lot of people make that like an integral part of their message that defines them. For me, it's a cool thing, but for people talk to me all the time about this. The only reason why I really have it is because of the joy that I get to do with it in terms of taking kids that have cancer or kids for their birthday. Like I like the joy that I can use it for other people, because it gets to the point where if you go from a Corolla to a BMW, it's cool for a few months. If you go from a BMW to a Lamborghini, it's cool for a few months, right? So I don't let these things define me. And that's also coming back to my family, because if I ever did, I would be the first to get a call from my mom being like, what the heck are you doing and who do you think you are?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's
I've
cool.
got the right morals in place about this stuff.
Yeah, it's like autocorrect, mom,
Big time.
right? And
Yep.
when I see on your I see on your posts also, like they include, which is so cool. I noticed that, like, it includes your family, meaning, and it's not like, oh, you're posting with a hot chick. You know what I mean? You're
No.
posting with your mom, your dad, or I'm not sure who everybody is, but you can see that, like, the down to earth, just love that's happening
Yeah.
right there, right? So it's really
Yeah.
neat to see that contrast. And it's also like, we don't have to judge, whether it's a Corolla or a Lamborghini. Either way, it's, it's not good to judge anyone, right?
Yeah.
But what I wonder also, and I'm going back again, maybe I'm digging too hard, but like, to be a little boy and you were saying like you were overweight and you were bullied. The reason that I do bring that up is because I know that I have a lot of people on here who have like eating disorders, because we have counseling centers and everything. And that is one of the most painful experiences. I was hospitalized for an eating disorder when I was in my 20s. So I just know the pain around that sort of a thing. And you guys can't really see Mike right now, but Mike is like fit, like he's got it. He's got it all going on, right? And this you do. I mean, it's a fact. So the thing is, like, what do you what I mean, I'm sure you remember that pain. You had that solid foundation around you, which is so cool. But how did that change you as a person? What did that create in you? Being made fun of,
I
not feeling good about yourself, whatever.
Yeah, definitely. I think it taught me that not everybody's going to be there to have your back, and that you shouldn't rely on other people for happiness, right? And I think, looking at my family and the dynamic between them and the people that I was surrounded with, you have to learn, like everybody has told me in terms of my family, like my mom always said, take everything with a grain of salt. Just because somebody says it doesn't mean it's true. And what I've done is just use that and harnessed it as motivation, because, you know, when I look back unbiasedly as well, that's something that I always consciously do. Like the man that I've become through this journey is completely night and day different from the man that I was in middle school and high school. And when I look back at who I was a bit quirky and different. So it's not to justify or validate why I was ever bullied, but when I look back, I could see that that was something that allowed me to grow into who I needed to become, to get the confidence and to be the man that I am. And also, not to say that bullying because of being too skinny, too fat, being this color or that color is okay, because it's not and never will be. But I was overweight and I was not eating healthy and I was really obese. So not to ever justify it, but I think for me, it was almost inherently a good thing to hear some of these because of my family, because my parents would never tell me, hey, Mike, you're fat. hey, Mike, you're overweight. They want me to be happy. My mom is an incredible cook. She'll make treats. She'll do this.
Yeah.
And they just want us to be happy, which is beautiful, but it can be beautiful to a fault, to the point where I became obese. So when I look at that, it was almost like I could take some beauty from those messages, as mixed as they were at that time with somebody that was not really in the mental space that I was, but use that over the course of years to correct it. Because whether it be harsh or whether it be genuine, if people don't tell you things that might actually be wrong, you have no way to fix it. So now that I know that I was out of shape and I could see that, I don't let myself get to that extent that I ever was before. And now that I knew that I was showing up in a way that didn't align with everybody, that allowed me to look at where were my shortcomings and pitfalls and how can I change that over time. So it was really powerful for growth when I started to actually unbiasedly reflect and look and kind of pick that journey apart and see what it was allowed me to turn into over the last, number of years.
Mike, I love what you just said. And there's so many elements about it that are so cool, but it is true, and one of the things we try to teach parents here, and I've been talking a lot about codependency, is that as parents, I'm a mom, right? So parents don't ever want to see their children in pain. And I have this kind of like, it's kind of a harsh way of looking at it, but I feel like it's selfish. Mm-hmm. Because, and all due respect to your parents and all parents, but really the reason we don't want to see our kids in pain sometimes is because we can't handle it. But the pain for them is very often very, very good for them. And it can create something. And it's interesting. It was right on the heels of me saying about your mother auto-correcting. But society or human beings, like if we're not acting right, people will move away from us, and there will be the obnoxious person who will tell us what's wrong with us if we're willing to hear it. So yeah. That's really cool the way that you put it, because you're not coming in here, because I've talked to people who have been bullied and they still have the ramifications. They still have the insecurities, right? But they will maybe talk about it as a victim. But you're talking about it as like, how did I use this raw material to create who I am today? And that's like such a great message, because you can hear that through your story,
And I think it's something that, again, I've even forgiven a lot of the people from that high school, because I could almost align with, them in the circle where they were, and they've grown and become different people. And knowing that I'm such a drastically different person now than I was then maybe they've changed as well. And many haven't, but many have. And that's been great for discussion. And it almost leads to another conversation, which is bullying in a different way that comes with success, not by intent. And what I mean by that is it's not necessarily bullying, but I find that once you get to the point of success, you're not able to hear the right constructive things, because you get two sides of things. Like for me and you and many people in RT and everybody else, everybody just glorifies you. They tell you everything you're doing right, everything you touch, it turns to gold, and you only hear the great things. And then usually the only bad things you hear are for people that are jealous, have animosity, they're, low self-esteem, and they're using that as just a venting tool. So they're just being like what many consider, for lack of a better term, a hater. So the positive has some benefits to it, but it also shouldn't carry much weight. And then the negative doesn't carry any weight because of the fact that it's people that are not in any position to carry weight. So it's almost quirky when you get to the next level in your career, where now people are almost afraid to say what is real because of where you're at in the position of your career. And now it's a different level of taking information from people and how it affects you in the growth of your business. Who do you listen to? What should you listen to? And that kind of journey as well. So it's interesting to see the different phases as you progress in life and how people are going to share their information relative to that.
That's, that is so true. And when you're describing like haters, right? We're so quick to say, oh, look what's wrong with them. What I love about, let's say, a hater or whatever, it's that even if it's mostly skewed in something that's, silly or just, whatever, a troll or whatever, but to actually hear, if you can take, like if someone said, oh, Allison, you're selfish, right? And I would immediately say, well, I'm not selfish. I'm always giving. But if I took a moment and I said, you know what? There are parts of me that are selfish. I'm not 100% selfish, but thank you for the opportunity to squeak out or shine out that one part of me that is still that, right? I have somebody who runs my business. Her name's Rachel. She's here. And basically, one of the things that we have here is, it's because we're therapists also, but she'll be like, I hear you saying this one word often, like this one word, obviously. She said, I was saying it all the time. And just there was some other word. And she said, I just know, just take note. That's something that must be something inside of you. And we do that with one another because it's like, I feel like people in our lives who have earned the right to share things about us, I think that's the key. When you have somebody who is not judging you, but they'll validate what's good and they'll also show you your blind spots. It's such a gift, right? Because you don't feel judged by them, right?
The only way you're going to grow is
Yeah.
exactly. The only way you're going to grow is the constructive criticism. So I have a handful of people in my life, whether it be my girlfriend or a couple of my business partners, that again are always looking out for my best interests and will call me out. And I ask them to. I want to hear that because that's the only genuine way that you will ever grow, make progress, and not just get consumed in listening to all the praise and accolades and all the amazing things that you're doing.
Yes.
Like that keeps you where you are. And it's important to have those people. Of course.
I'm just kidding. I couldn't think of anything. I just thought it would be funny if I thought of something and said, I'm just kidding. So yeah. So like, do you ever feel like, what do you feel when that happens? Like what, should I ask you, like what kinds of things pop up for you at your level that you feel are important to grow and change in?
Yeah, definitely. So my coach, he's incredible, and he's worked with the best of the best, George Bryant, and he's the #1 customer journey specialist in the world. And he says something which is very true, is that everybody is on a customer journey, whether you've designed it or not. So whether you're taking them on a journey or whether you're letting them go on their own, everybody is a journey that is coming to your ecosystem. So it's way better to design it. And I think that was a really important lesson to learn in terms of how I apply my business, because for me, leading such a vast group of people, it's really important to be able to relate to different personality types and align a journey that makes sense to them and meets them where they're at. I think one of the biggest things that I learned, and this is something that I've now had to help all my other leaders with, is the easiest way to explain it is the dynamic between Andy and Ed. And the reason why I say this is because I use Andy and his style of business for my internal motivation and my drive and things like that. Where I see a lot of people go wrong is, for me, with having 1,500 agents and growing pretty significantly every month, a lot of agents latch on to Andy's approach to everything, which is great when it comes to mental fortitude, grit, and mental toughness, everything like that. The issue is they try to take his delivery and use that to lead their team without being in a controlled container like he has, right?
Yes.
So what happens is my business is made up for the 99%. His approach and mindset is for the 1%. And people are trying to run it for the 99% in the 1% way, and it pushes people away. So my natural tendency is to not have very clean language. My natural tendency is a much more aggressive approach to business. But I had to realize that with the average agent being a 55-year-old woman, when they hear a 30-year-old guy that's, jacked up and, swearing and yelling on the calls, that doesn't align with them. And that takes them on a journey that they don't necessarily want to be a part of. So what I had to do is become much more familiar, almost like Ed does, because he built, within WFG, which is a very similar structure to mine, understanding how to, now I'm able to run my leaders calls like Andy does, and like I naturally would want to, because they're my heavy hitters, top 1%, and they get it. But when I look at the 99% and the other people in the organization, I have to take a more emotional approach, almost like how Ed relates to people, and bring it down to their level a little bit, tone it down so that they can feel seen, heard, felt, and loved. And that was a big eye opener, because I was running it the way that comes completely authentic to me, which is like straight bulldozer approach. But that wasn't for everybody. Everybody liked what I had to say, but they didn't like how I said it. And I
Yes.
needed to hear that from people of, Mike, I loved the call today, got me fired up, but did you really have to say, the F word 30 times?
Yeah.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
when I started thinking about it, my initial reaction was like, well, if you can't accept that, then basically you're not the right fit. But then when I started thinking about this, is where everything changed. I think of everybody as family. So what I started thinking is, when that 55-year-old woman would give me that feedback, I thought, what if that was my mom giving somebody feedback? How would I want them to respond to my mom? Because if
Love
my
that.
mom was feeling that way, how would I want some 30-year-old to lash back at my mom? That is somebody's mom. And the
Exactly.
answer was no. So I had to take a different approach by being able to blend my normal approach to the 1%, but a more toned down approach that brings people to meet them where they're at for the general. And now my business blew up and it's thriving, because now I can relate to people and take them on a journey that they want to be a part of and that they're excited to be a part of, not that they feel like they have to be a part of.
I love it so much. Mike, it's interesting because one of the things I ask people, just across the board is, how do you think people are experiencing you? And what it sounds like you did, like, so often we'll be like, oh, well, that's just me. But we're
Mm-hmm.
not considering the other person. So it's like so much of life, if because we are like, we don't live in a vacuum, right? Like, we have relationships, and relationships are everything for every business everywhere. It's everything, right? So like, from my experience with you, is you've been very like, you're very relational, just from what I know, and very like really good natured. And when I say diplomatic, I don't mean it's contrived or it's very genuine, but to me, the fact that you're thinking like that, you're not thinking only from yourself. You're thinking about, because that right there is humility, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're able to say this you're looking at her instead of yourself,
Yeah.
and what her value is for you, right? And what her value is in
100%.
life, right? So
And
that
that's,
that
I
yeah.
think, been something that I just think has been a skill set that took time to develop, but really help is, for me, it's the unbiased approach to business, which is, for example, a lot of people ask, how did I get good on video? Well, I think unbiasedly, and I rewatch every single piece of content that I put out before it goes live, and think, if I was not me, if I've never heard of me and I had no context as to who I was and what I've done, if this video landed in front of me, would I watch it? Would I go so far as to like it? Would I even go through the effort of commenting on this video? And would I even care so much to subscribe? And what happens is, people approach their business in such a biased way. I know what I've done. I know the value in this video is huge, so everybody should want to watch it. I know this ad is going to be incredible from my perspective, so everybody should click on it and want to put in the right information. I know my leadership is made for the 1% and I want the 1%. So I'm going to run it this way, and everybody else that doesn't agree with it, then they can go screw off. Like, that is not reality, because everybody's going to have a different way to receive that message and that information. So for me, every single decision I make and every single thing I do, I think completely unbiasedly, from removing myself from the equation and thinking, if I was on the other side, under different context, how would I receive this? And that's been the biggest game changer in terms of creating content that converts, leadership styles that create movements, and building an exponentially scaling business, is being able to relate to those different types of people by thinking from their perspective and not selfishly from my own.
I'll tell you something, what you just said right there, I'm gonna run with that, because really, honestly, Mike, I do not even look at the stuff that I put out there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because I'm so critical of myself that I feel like I never put anything out, and I put stuff out all the time. So what I love, there's something about, I wish I'm trying to zoom out, and I'm thinking about, I always, because therapist in me, I'm zooming out. I'm going, okay, here's this guy who was criticized, but then at the same time, he's got these parents who are fortifying him. So I'm hearing this mix in you of this man who was, so you're able to look with this critical eye while also feeling fortified. It's like it's personified in you, which
Yeah.
is incredible. You don't usually hear that. And I wanted to ask because I just, when you gave that training, that YouTube training, I'm like, I have never seen a training that good ever. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do all those things. And of course I didn't, because now I just feel like I'm not, people will hear you and they'll be like, I could never do what he does. And where do you have the time? So now you invest so much time in creating this stuff that's so good. How do you manage your time? How could a person like me, and I'm running brick and mortar, like locations, whatever, mental health, crisis, whatever. How would somebody like me do something like that? I'm asking for myself, actually. I'm asking for a friend.
Yeah, of course.
I have this friend who has like these locations and they just are too busy for this. Could you help him?
It's going to be probably the worst answer,
No,
but
tell me. I
it's
love
the
it.
reality of my business, which is, and you'll love this, which is this right here. For anybody that can't see, my RTA
Oh, yeah.
notebook
Yeah.
and my daily power list.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that is how I run my entire business. And what I do is I prioritize things based on both short and long-term income.
Yep.
And for me, what happened is a lot of people get caught up in the micro when the micro is not the focus at this point, right?
Yep.
Which is like getting better on content. You don't even have the data to get better because you haven't even got enough repetitions in with enough volume to even look at yourself through a critical lens. And then as you start to develop more volume or time under the belt and your skill set develops, then you can go back and go from macro to micro and look at things in a more critical avenue. So for me, like when I start something, my activity is more based on volume and time under the belt with that activity to actually build up the skill set and the data. Once I get that point, I then start going through it with a fine-tooth comb because now it's a game of inches, not yards. And so for me, I just really prioritize things based on either A, what fills my bucket from a personal level, or B, what fills my business from a financial level, and looking at how that fits into the overall long-term movement, because I approach everything with the most delayed gratification mindset humanly possible. So for me, I do a lot of things, and mentors of ours have shared this, which is that there's value in the inefficiencies, and I allot a certain amount of time in my calendar every day to do inefficient tasks that I know will yield massive results. Rewatching my own content when you're making upwards of 8 figures a year is the most inefficient thing you could humanly do. But that is the only way that I'm able to consciously and continuously develop my skill set as a creator to convert higher, to resonate deeper, to connect more with people. So it's like the handwritten notes that First Form does.
Yes.
Very hyper inefficient, very valuable in the long-term lifetime value play. So for me, that trickles down to everything that I do. Is I have a bucket of time always allocated to the inefficiencies, and then the rest is focused on hyper productivity, one thing at a time. And that's kind of how I go about allocating my time on a daily basis.
That's really cool. What do you do what inefficiencies do you focus on for just like personal relationships and things like that, if you know?
Yeah, definitely. And this was a big thing that I learned from my mentor, George Bryant, and talking about customer journey. And this is something that I'm actively working on because I'm still not perfect at it, but it's one of these things that I think is an evolution of where you need to go and who you need to become. And the way that he structures his business, because I had the worst habit of waking up, going straight to my computer, straight to work at 4 a.m. And I would work until 10 p.m. and then I would rinse and repeat every single day. And the way that he's designed it and the way that I'm redesigning mine on the personal level is you need to earn the right to fill the world's bucket. And what he means by that is that most people wake up and go straight to pouring into the world, but they don't pour into themselves and their family and friends first. And so the way that he's designed his day, and he's helping me restructure mine, is the first thing you need to do is wake up and pour into yourself, which is the gym or 75 hard and proper nutrition and time to reflect or red light therapy or meditation or whatever works for you. And then after that, you then need to pour into your family's bucket or your personal bucket with your friends, your kids, your parents. Send messages to people, like past contacts and clients, telling them that you're thinking about them, want to reconnect, like all of the personal aspect. Then by 8, 9 a.m., you've now earned the right to pour into the world's bucket. And I think that realization and shift for me was really powerful, because I was waking up going straight to pouring into the world's bucket, and my family, friends, relationships were completely suffering. And now it's just knowing that I've put a much higher priority on family and relationships than I ever have, because coming full circle with my story, before I turned 30, I was very material driven, not based on being materialistic, but tying that to me feeling like I've achieved something substantial. So it was tied to the meaning, but not in the right way. So what happens is all my goals before 30 was the car, the penthouse, this watch, that trip. And what happened is very cliche. You get to the end of it and you're like, wow, I'm unhappier than I've ever been, even though I've got more than I've ever had.
Yeah.
And so now when I see that, my time with, my girlfriend or family and close friends is what actually makes me feel fulfilled. Like when time comes up to spend with my family, I will cancel everything to make that work now. And I've spent more time with them in the last 6 months than I have in probably the last 5 years. And same with relationships. So I'm just looking at allocating time and prioritizing things that might not have the direct impact on my business, but it does on a back end, because you're more fulfilled and you execute at a higher level, knowing that you've got that reward coming down the pipeline.
I love that. And the when I'm thinking about, originally prioritizing those material things, it was just about your value. It was just how
Yep.
it just was tied. That was the meaning attached to it. What it was, the valuable thing meant you were valuable, right? That you created this. And it's just, to me, so much of what we miss is that, when we show up in our best self, and that has to do with us pouring into ourselves, right? Like that. I love that order that your coach is showing you. It's like your mentor is like, when I pour into myself and I am committed to showing up in my best Allison, I'm the most loving, I'm the most generous, but when I'm depleted, I'm the most irritable, I'm the least generous, I'm the most judgmental, right? So all of that, just, that's not our real selves. Our real selves is the fulfilled self, isn't it? That's who we
It
really
is.
are. And that's what
And
we're
that's where
meant
I
to
went
be.
really wrong. For me, what happened was, and this is, I forget who said this. It was like a random saying that was not even like a recognized quote, but somebody said this a while ago, which is that, you can give people the best of you, or you can give them the rest of you. And what happened is, I was giving my relationships, my friends, my family, the rest of me, because I was only allocating time to them after I did everything business wise, to the point where I was like mentally brain fried, physically drained, and absolutely cooked, to the point where I was like present, but not really. So I was giving them the rest of me. And now I'm focusing more on giving them the best of me and making sure that I do allocate time, to the right people and to the right sort of things in life. And it's made a huge difference. And again, there's no balance here, and that's never going to be a thing. There's harmony. And
Yes.
right now, for example, like I'm relaunching my social media program and a couple of other things, creating new programs, like from February to mid-March. Like I do not have balance, and people know that they will probably get the rest of me for the next month and a half. But after that, I'm aware that this is just a season within my business that I have to buckle down and crank things out. And then after that, I've earned the right to get back to the normal routine and pour into them with the best of me. So it's being cognizant of the fact that you're never going to have balance or equality across all aspects of your life, but you can find different ways to make it work harmoniously during different seasons of what you've got going on in your life, where maybe now, instead of spending a certain amount of time every single day with my significant other or every single week with my family, I might have to sprint for a week and spend one full afternoon with them and block that time off, as a priority. So it's just looking at how can you make these changes that are going to make this harmoniously work together.
And what's so key about what you said, and I think because you are, in a way, you are putting them first, even though the season is you're away from them, right? But because you are aware of it, to me, that's everything. If you communicate to another human being, hey, this is what it's going to be. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end, but I'm aware of you in this process. I mean, that's what you're saying to your family and your girlfriend. I'm aware of you, and then they're understanding you. But if, so to me, you are giving them the first. You're giving them the first of you in February, right? Because you're telling them that, which is so cool. It's like a great way to do it. One of the things we find in, with marriage and divorce, and it's a little weird what I'm going to say, but it's a thing, is that as a marriage counselor, I have seen over and over and over again, like a million times, it's an epidemic that people give the rest of them, the last of them, the least of them to their spouse and their kids. And this is one of the things I've had to say to people. It's a little weird. I'm going to say it on here, but you'll hear it, is that so many people are like, yeah, well, we never have intimacy. We never have sex, right? I'm just going to say this on here. It sounds weird to say it, but it's like, oh, we never have sex. So that's an epidemic in marriages, right? Long-term marriages. And one of the things you'll find is that it's that they've poured out all day long for everything that they're doing, their tasks. And then they're like, and I'll ask them, well, what is the reason that you're not having this connection? And they'll say, oh, I'm too tired. I don't have enough time. But it's like, but I said, well, what's wrong with the morning before you do anything else? But that is such a game changer for marriages, because if it's like they talk about in the Bible, the first fruits, the first thing that you invest in, right, sets the tone for everything. Right? So then when you have that foundation of your marriage there, that's secure, and then you move on through your day, everything feels better. If you know your relationship with your girlfriend and your family is good and solid, and you're not guilty all day long, I should be here, right? So much of stress is like, oh, I'm here now, I should be there. And then when you're there, you should be here. But if you know, right? You know what I'm talking about? Yes? So Michael, I want to be respectful of your time because you're a badass and you're like probably off to somewhere. But I just want to know, tell us anything that you want us to know, anything that you think is key to success, because you're a young guy and you have come a really long way, and you talk about it like it's nothing and you're so smart. Like, what would you say to someone, let's say, who's even your age, who has not like really found their groove or feels like a low self-esteem? Like, what would you say to them if they want to succeed?
Yeah, there's a number of different things, and I think it kind of summarizes the principles of what I've used in order to get to where I am right now, which is, again, looking at my unorthodox journey, get into real estate. It wasn't about finding your perfect niche and passion to get started with the right thing from day one. It was building momentum in one area of your life that will at least allow you to develop the skill sets that might lead you or open doors to where you want to go in that perfect position in the future. So a lot of people get all caught up saying, I hate my job, but I don't know exactly what I want to do. Well, go learn the skill sets that lead you passionately to where you might one day want to go. And I think that's really important, which also blend into, I've got these kind of 8 principles, and I'll just kind of talk about a few of them, which is, again, focusing on one thing is a huge thing. one thing at a time. A lot of people get scatterbrained because they say that based on their skill sets, their interests, they could do this, that, and the other thing. Well, the quote that one of my, mentors said years ago was, the man who chases two rabbits catches none. In the
Yep.
beginning, if you want to build momentum, you have to focus on one thing and one thing only, because a lot of people hear this silly quote that the average millionaire has 7 income streams. Well, of course, because once they become a millionaire, they diversify across 7 income streams, but they used one to get there. And I
Yep.
think focusing on one thing is incredibly important. Hitting singles is much better than hitting home runs. I built
Yep.
my entire business off singles, off door knocking, the next door, the next door, the next door, not focusing on that one unicorn $1 million listing or that one unicorn brokerage that joins me. I focus more on the consistent singles, which add up to get more significant results than the home runs. I think another thing that was really important for me on my journey is trusting the process and having full commitment, in the sense that if somebody has done something, then I can do it too. And what I mean by that is, by embracing delayed gratification. When I got started on YouTube, for example, the mentality I see a lot of people fail with is they say, well, I'm going to start doing this, but if I don't get X amount of views, subscribers, or clients within the first 3 months, then I'm going to stop. And my mentality with anything is that if you can't do it for a lifetime, don't do it for a day. When I started on video, I was going to do video for the rest of my career, and I will never miss a single week, because I know if all these other people have done it and succeeded with it, as long as I commit to a proven process, then it will work out. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And a lot of people are looking for the ifs and the doubts, instead of just committing to a proven process that is guaranteed to work out if you just do the right things for long enough. And I think
Yes.
that's a really important aspect to the growth of your business. And then, really just looking at that unbiased approach, I think made the biggest difference in my business, is thinking unbiasedly about everything and understanding that people are on a journey, whether you design it or not. And a lot of people think that, you have to have everything perfect, and you really don't. But you have to think from the consumer's perspective. But in the beginning, a lot of it is just committing consistently to something, iterating over time unbiasedly, and then embracing that delayed gratification approach, knowing that if you put in the right activities to the right things, the doors are going to open for you. You don't know if, when, or how, but it's inevitable that at some point it will.
I could listen to you all day, really, honestly, because that all of that stuff it is all such gold, Michael, really. And I hope that everyone who's listening really takes to heart, because we are so conditioned. I mean, this podcast is about crushing mediocrity mostly, and awakening, to our greatness. And basically, what you're describing is the background, the landscape behind the greatness, right? Because they say 20 hours. If you do 20 hours of one thing, you're going to learn it. But
Mm-hmm.
nobody wants to do that first hour. Alex Hormozy says that a lot, that first
Yeah.
hour, and we're impatient. But small is the new big. It's everything, right? Consistent
It's
small
huge.
steps. Yep. I
And I
love,
talk about
yeah.
this a lot
Mm-hmm.
in real estate, which is like,
Yes.
I find that one of the biggest crutches to people in terms of their failure as a new entrepreneur in business is
Yeah.
that they forgot how to learn. And what I mean by that is that most people, and this is what I'll leave things with, is that most people stop learning when the repercussions are immediate. And what I mean by that is that if you're in high school and you don't learn calculus, you get a big fat F and you have to go redo it to pass. You have to learn it, or the repercussion is immediate. If you don't do what you need to do in university or college, well, you fail and you have to learn it to go to the next step. But the problem with business and entrepreneurship is that if you don't learn a new skill set, whether it be short form video, which I was dreading for years, or whether it be YouTube, or whether it be prospecting, or any aspect of business, using a CRM, which nobody uses. Like if you look at it from a business approach, if you don't learn that skill, the repercussions are delayed. The issue is that nothing's going to happen today, tomorrow, or next month. You just go broke in 6 to 12 months and you fail. So
Yeah.
what happens is people use that as almost like an excuse to not learn something, because technically they don't have to, because they can't feel or see the immediate repercussions and ramifications of not learning that skill. The problem is that it's delayed and it comes back and hits even harder because of that delay, because it compounds.
You know what you just said, and we're ending on that, is that what you're saying basically is that what we know, that what we're doing today, we don't see today, right? This is the whole point,
Right.
that all the results are 6 months, 9 months, a year later, and whether good or bad, right? And if
Mm-hmm.
just just keep swimming, for God's sakes, Michael, right?
Exactly.
Okay, exactly. So tell us where people can find you. How can they learn from you? Tell us everything that people need to know about where you are and how to utilize your services.
Definitely, yeah. So the two best places, if you want to learn, usually my YouTube channel is the most valuable one, which is just my name, Mike Sherrard. And then if you want to get in touch or have any questions or want feedback on anything, then Instagram is the place to go, because I do check all of my own DMs every day. So if anybody reaches out, then I'm more than happy. Say you came from Allison's podcast, and I'll give you a bit of extra love. But that's usually the best way, is to get in touch with me on Instagram, check out my content. Even though my YouTube channel is entirely tailored towards real estate, the principles apply to every single industry, regardless of what you're in. So we get a lot of people within RTA and other communities that watch it and just find their own way to apply it to their business.
Yeah. So suppose somebody wants to be in your business or real estate with you, what would they do?
Yeah, hit me up on Instagram, send me a direct message. Again, I'm very much an open book, like hopefully you saw today.
Yeah.
So whether it's a partnership with me or somebody else, or whatever the direction you decide to take is, I'm always here to chat and give you my 2 cents on what I can do to help.
So, Mike, I just want to thank you so much for being here. It's really just an honor. I think you're a great guy on so many levels, and you've given so much here today. And I really mean it. I feel like it's getting me, thinking about myself and my YouTube channel, because, you know, I'm focusing on one thing in the other direction. But anyhow, I just want to thank you so much. You've just been a great guest with so much value. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Excited to see what else we can do together, and grateful for everybody that listened up to this point.
Thank you, Michael.